Tommy Ramone was not the first name people think of when they talk about punk rock, but without him, the entire course of music history might have taken a different turn. A man born out of the memory of war, carrying within him the haunting weight of the past, became the drummer who helped unleash the most chaotic sound New York had ever heard in the 1970s. He was not the face of the stage, not the shocking figure, but the one behind it all, quiet, precise, and essential to how everything functioned. Born as Tamás Erdélyi into a Hungarian Jewish family that survived the Holocaust, Tommy grew up surrounded by stories no child should ever have to hear. Fear, loss, and the memory of death never left his home. But instead of breaking under it, he turned to music, not to seek fame, but to gain control over the chaos within himself. And from that, as a paradox began to form. The man who wanted to escape the noise of his past became the one who created the loudest sound of his era. When the Ramones were formed, Tommy had no intention of becoming the drummer. He planned to be the manager, the one working behind the scenes to keep everything in motion. But when no one else could maintain the relentless pace the band required, he stepped into the role, reluctantly, yet irreplaceably. His drumming was not complex, not flashy, but fast, direct, and ruthless, just like the music they created. And from that moment, one of punk's greatest contradictions emerged. The man who least wanted to be on stage became the one who defined how the world would hear punk rock. On January 29, 1949, in Budapest, in a city still marked by a war that had not yet fully closed, Tamás Erdélyi was born into a Jewish family. His parents were professional photographers, people accustomed to preserving images of the world, and yet forced to live through a time when memory itself became the hardest thing to hold on to. They survived the Holocaust by hiding, protected by others, while many of their relatives did not have that chance. Those losses did not exist in the form of long stories or direct explanations. They lived within the way the family functioned, in caution, in silences that lasted longer than usual, in the way everything was kept under control. For a child born after the war like Tamás, memory didn't need to be passed down through words. It was already there, like an invisible layer shaping how the adults saw the world, and in turn, shaping how he grew up within it. In 1957, after the upheaval of the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, the family left Hungary, carrying little more than what they could keep. They arrived in the United States, starting in the South Bronx, a completely different environment from Budapest, both in pace and in social structure. The early years there were not a continuation, but a process of reconstruction. And from a family that once had a clear professional standing, they had to adapt to a new environment, a new language, and a system they had never belonged to. Later, the family moved to Forest Hills, Queens, a more stable, middle-class area. It was there, at Verona Estates, that Tamás began to feel what could be called home. He would later refer to that place as home sweet home, not in a romantic sense, but as a rare point of stability in a childhood marked by displacement. It was also here that the name Tamás gradually became Tomás Erdélyi, a change not only in name, but one that reflected a deeper process of adapting to the new environment. His high school years at Forest Hills High School were not marked by standout achievements, but they were a crucial period in forming connections. Tamás began playing guitar, joining a small band called Tangerine Puppets. It was not a successful project, nor did it create any breakthrough, but it laid the foundation for something more important. He met John Cummings, who would later be known as Johnny Ramone. This connection did not immediately lead to a major band, nor did it open a clear path. It existed as a point of intersection where people who shared an interest in music began to recognize one another. Irregular rehearsals, unfocused experiments, all of it took place in a space without the pressure of success, yet enough to keep something alive. At 18, Thomas left school, and this decision was not accompanied by a clear plan to become a performing artist. Instead, he stepped into another space of music, the recording studio. At Record Plant, he worked as an assistant engineer, a position that did not appear on stage, not often mentioned, but placed him at the center of the process of creating sound. In the early 1970s, Thomas entered Record Plant as an assistant engineer, standing in a position where he could observe how a piece of music was built from the smallest details. There, sound did not appear as a continuous flow, but was constructed through each decision, whether to keep or remove, extend or cut. While participating in the production process of Band of Gypsies by Jimi Hendrix, he gained direct exposure to how a major artist worked with sonic structure at a minimal level while still maintaining force. This experience gradually shaped a clear perspective. Music did not need expansion to be effective. It could hold its entire energy within a compact, direct form. Outside the studio, New York was moving in a different direction. New bands emerged, styles collided, small venues filled with sound. Tommy stepped out of that space with a clearly formed perspective. He was searching for a structure that could function in a constantly shifting environment where everything had to maintain its rhythm under immediate pressure. Forest Hills became the point of convergence. There, he reconnected with Johnny, who held the guitar rhythm in a straight, solid way. Dee Dee brought in ideas that were unfinished but always in motion. Joey appeared with a voice that could pull an entire song forward. Tommy did not separate them into individuals. He began placing them within the same framework, testing what would happen when every element operated within the same rhythm. Rehearsals took place in a continuous loop, but what Tommy preserved was not just speed. He forced each song to have a clear shape, removing parts that caused the energy to drop and keeping everything directed toward its strongest point. The name Ramones appeared as a unifying layer covering the entire band. Joey Ramone, Johnny Ramone, Dee Dee Ramone, Tommy Ramone, 4 names placed side by side like a unified system. When individuality was placed within the same structure, the music followed that direction, maintaining a common axis, unaltered, unbroken, undivided. During this period, Tommy did not hold the drumsticks. He managed, observed, adjusted, and kept the band operating in the right direction. Performances at small clubs became the place where everything was tested in real time. The audience stood close to the stage, reacting almost instantly to every beat. A song that maintained its force would pull the entire space along with it. A moment of slack would cause the rhythm to drop within seconds. Tommy followed the audience's reactions as a direct part of the refinement process. A musical passage that sustained its force would carry the entire room forward, while even a single drop in momentum was enough to throw the energy off its trajectory. What happened on stage did not end there. It was brought back into the rehearsal room, where songs continued to be trimmed, accelerated, and tightened until they could stand firmly in a live environment. By 1974, a change took place within the band itself. Joey, who had originally held the position of drummer, could no longer keep up with the speed they themselves had pushed forward, while his voice proved more suited to the structure that was taking shape. The position behind the drum kit was therefore left vacant in the middle of a system already operating at high speed, and no replacement had been prepared in advance. When the drum position opened up, Tommy was the only one who fully understood the exact tempo at which the band was functioning. He did not step in as a drummer in the conventional sense, but brought with him the entire perspective he had developed in the studio, maintaining a steady tempo, cutting away excess, and not allowing any section to break the flow of movement. His strikes were simple, fast, and decisive, placing the rhythm directly at the center, so that the structure was no longer held from behind, but existed visibly on stage. Bowery at night did not resemble a music center, but inside CBGB, a different current was forming with dense intensity and almost no breathing space. The tight space kept the audience pressed close to the stage, close enough to feel every vibration, making every detail of the sound immediate and exposed. Tommy Ramone sat behind the drum kit in that environment, where each song had to hold its structure from the very first moment, with no opportunity for adjustment afterward, forcing the entire system to operate with precision in real time. The tempo was pushed faster than what was familiar, not to create explosive effect, but to sustain a continuous flow of energy, turning each song into a direct forward thrust, undivided, unextended. Johnny's guitar remained minimal, repeating with solidity. Dee Dee's bass held tightly to the foundation to keep the entire mass of sound from slipping. Joey's vocals pulled everything onto the same axis. At the center of that structure, Tommy's drumming served as the anchor. No display of technique, no expansion, only maintaining the exact speed and tension needed for everything else to attach and continue moving. The performances repeated in a cycle of testing and adjustment, where each song was reduced to its minimum, excess removed, only the strongest elements retained, allowing their music to gradually take on a clear form. Short, fast, direct, holding all its energy within a very short span of time. Outside that space, the music industry continued to operate in a direction of expansion and complexity, making the sound of the Ramones a clear deviation, one not widely embraced commercially, yet spreading in another way, directly influencing those who experienced it up close. And throughout this entire process, Tommy Ramone remained in his position behind the drums, where every decision about rhythm and structure passed before becoming part of the overall sound, helping to shape a style that did not require layers to exist, yet carried enough force to change how music would be created in the period that followed. The year 1976 did not open with a leap in sales, but with a recording that was kept almost entirely intact, where everything happened fast, compact, without layering and without extending beyond what was necessary. The Ramones' first album came out of the studio with a clear form, raw sound, high tempo, a structure compressed to minimalism, yet maintaining a continuous driving force from beginning to end. Tommy Ramone sat behind the drums while also serving as co-producer, controlling how each song was constructed, ensuring that no part drifted beyond the axis that had already been defined. During the recording process, every decision was made at a speed nearly equivalent to how they performed on stage. A song was recorded in just a few takes, keeping the rhythm, keeping the energy, without thickening it with additional layers of sound. Tommy monitored the entire process, keeping everything aligned with the intended direction, ensuring that each track went straight to its core, not stretched by the production habits of the time. When the album was released, the reaction did not come in the conventional way of the industry. The charts did not reflect any standout position, sales did not create a clear breakthrough, but their sound began to move in another direction, spreading through clubs, through young bands, through those who stood close to the stage rather than listening through the radio. A style was being recognized not through numbers, but through the way it was repeated, transformed, and continued to spread among those who experienced it directly. Moving into 1977, the band's operational pace was pushed even higher. Leave Home and Rocket to Russia continued to maintain the structure that had been established, while sharpening each element further, making the sound clearer and more stable within the environment of continuous performance. Tommy continued to hold two roles simultaneously, drummer and co-producer, both maintaining the rhythm on stage and controlling how recordings were completed in the studio, ensuring consistency between these two spaces. The tours stretched on with dense intensity, performances following one another across multiple cities, each night repeating the same set list, but with energy constantly pushed to its highest level. Tommy maintained the rhythm of the entire system under those conditions, where even the smallest deviation could cause the entire structure to slip off course. His drumming did not expand for display, but held exactly the necessary speed, solid enough for the entire band to attach to and move in sync through each song. On the other side of the stage, pressure accumulated over time. The dense touring schedule left no space to stop. The studio continued to demand new output, while commercial response remained modest compared to the intensity of their activity. A band creating an influence far greater than what was reflected on paper, and that disparity forced the entire system to operate in a constant state of tension. Tommy Ramone held the rhythm on stage, held the structure in the studio, keeping the entire system from being pulled off course by any external factor. The music of the Ramones continued to spread, not along a straight upward line on the charts, but along another trajectory, moving deeper into smaller spaces where it was heard directly, preserved and recreated by those who recognized that its strength lay in the very simplicity they maintained. The tempo that had been pushed to its maximum in the previous phase began to leave cracks within the structure itself. The tours, moving from city to city, kept the band in constant motion. But at the same time, differences in personality became increasingly visible, no longer masked by the energy on stage. The confined space of tour vans, temporary rooms, and performances repeated at high intensity created an environment where every friction, no matter how small, accumulated over time. Within that context, Tommy Ramone maintained his position as an anchor point for the entire system. He monitored the tour schedule, held the structure of performances together, and ensured that everything operated in the correct rhythm, even as pressure increased with each leg. On stage, the drumming had to maintain absolute precision. Behind the stage, our relationships among the members stretched in different directions. On one side was the need to maintain discipline and structure. On the other were increasingly pronounced personal reactions, all coexisting within the same space at the same time. The pressure did not come from a single event, but accumulated through each performance, each trip, each repetition at the same intensity. The body began to respond to the continuous pace, while the mind had to maintain focus without sufficient breaks. Tommy continued to hold the role of organizer and coordinator, but that very position required him to absorb most of the pressure coming from the entire system. By 1978, the decision to step away from the drummer position was not made suddenly, but emerged as an inevitable result of the prolonged process before it. His final performance at CBGB closed a phase in which he had kept the rhythm since the earliest days, when the structure had not yet been fully formed. There was no major announcement accompanying it, only a clear transition. The position behind the drum kit was handed over to someone else, while he stepped away from a direct role on stage. The reason did not lie in a specific conflict, but in a state of exhaustion accumulated over time, when the touring pace no longer allowed the body and mind to sustain the required level of focus. For Tommy, leaving the drummer position did not mean leaving the system he had helped build, but rather an adjustment, maintaining his role in a different form, one more aligned with how he had operated from the beginning. After stepping away from the drum kit, Tommy Ramone remained with the Ramones in a role more familiar to him, behind the structure, where he could continue to control how the music was formed without needing to stand on stage. He took part in producing subsequent albums, bringing with him all the experience accumulated from the earlier period to ensure that the band's sound did not lose the identity that had been established. In the studio, his role returned to its starting point, monitoring each layer of sound, keeping the structure from drifting, ensuring that every song retained the directness and focus that were the foundation of the Ramones. Decisions about tempo, arrangement, and the maintenance of energy continued to pass through his position before becoming part of the final recording. However, the external context had changed. What had once been a clear deviation now began to be adopted and developed by other bands in many different directions. Punk was no longer a small space limited to a few clubs, but spread across multiple layers of popular music. In that process, the position of the Ramones no longer maintained the same level of commercial attention as in the early stage. Subsequent albums retained structural consistency, but the market response did not produce a clear breakthrough. The band continued to operate, to record, to perform, but the intensity of influence began to disperse as more variations of the style emerged. Moving into the 1980s, Tommy Ramone's position shifted away from the stage and stabilized behind the studio, where he continued working with sound in a broader context, as punk had expanded in many directions. His production work became associated with specific projects, including the album Tim by The Replacements and Neurotica by Red Cross, projects that placed him in working environments with bands that approached music differently from the Ramones, yet shared a common axis, direct structure, and concentrated energy. In the studio, Tommy maintained a familiar role, observing how songs were constructed, adjusting tempo, and ensuring that the structure did not extend beyond what was necessary, preventing the energy from dispersing. What he brought was not a new style, but a method already shaped earlier, placing simplicity and focus as the foundation, helping bands maintain their identity within a clear structure. His influence during this period extended beyond the Ramones, as these projects reached different audiences and contributed to shaping how some alternative rock bands operated in the studio. However, the level of attention these works received did not reach the scale of the Ramones' earlier influence, when punk was still a new point. These projects functioned as an expansion of his range of activity, but did not create a central influence with the same intensity as when he was directly holding the rhythm on stage. The musical landscape of the 1980s became more diverse, with multiple genres coexisting and competing for attention, making structurally oriented contributions harder to identify clearly. Even so, Tommy's role remained stable, focused on ensuring that sound was built with the necessary precision and did not drift away from the axis of each project. From the 1990s onward, Tommy Ramone's presence in the public space gradually diminished as he focused on behind-the-scenes work, appearing only in events directly related to the legacy of the Ramones. He participated in tribute projects, including producing recordings connected to members of the band, and appeared in certain commemorative performances where he returned to the stage on special occasions rather than maintaining regular activity. These appearances were tied to specific milestones when the Ramones were revisited in a different context, and Tommy's role retained its familiar nature, contributing to the overall completion rather than leading the event. In daily life, he maintained a steady working rhythm behind the scenes, rarely appearing in public and not participating in widespread promotional activities, and consistent with the way he had operated from the early years, when the focus had always been on controlling structure and sound. Tommy Ramone's entire career was tied to a consistent role, even as his specific position changed over time. As one of the co-founders of the Ramones, he was directly involved in shaping punk rock as a musical structure, where fast tempo, short form, and minimalism became the foundation. Decisions about rhythm and the removal of excess created a style with lasting influence extending beyond the band's initial scope of activity. A defining characteristic of his career lies in the disparity between influence and commercial success in the early period. The Ramones' records did not achieve high sales upon release, but generated widespread influence, adopted and developed by multiple generations of musicians afterward. As a result, Tommy's role is not measured by chart positions, but by how he helped construct a musical framework capable of enduring and continuing to spread over time. Throughout a journey spanning decades, Tommy Ramone's private life did not present itself in the familiar way of an artist associated with a highly influential band. What belonged to his personal life appeared sparingly, not drawn into the public spotlight, creating a clear separation between his private existence and the rest of his career. Where music operated at high intensity, while his personal life maintained its own rhythm, steady and contained. His marriage was with Claudia Tiemann, a musician as well. This connection was not constructed as a public image, but formed within the same working environment, where both shared an approach to sound and participated in joint projects. Music did not stand apart from life, but it also did not become something placed at the forefront to define their relationship. That discretion was not a calculated image, but closer to how Tommy had always operated from the beginning, keeping the personal outside the system he was part of. There was little information made public, no private milestones repeatedly brought forward as part of a public narrative. As a result, his personal life did not become a source of conflict or drama, but remained in a stable state over many years. The greatest pressures in Tommy's journey did not lie in his private life, but emerged within the working environment. The band operated at high intensity. Tours followed one after another, and personality differences gradually accumulated within an increasingly confined space. In a position that both held the rhythm and oversaw the entire structure, he became the point where these pressures converged. And until the decision to step away from the drummer position in 1978 appeared as a necessary adjustment, not to withdraw from the system, but to continue maintaining it in another form. Another phase gradually formed when life was no longer stretched by touring schedules or studio pressure. Yet music remained present as a familiar part of Tommy Ramone's life, not loud, not displayed, but existing within smaller spaces and connective projects, where he continued to work in the way he had already shaped, keeping a distance from public attention so that each appearance was tied to a specific context, when the music of the Ramones was revisited in a different form, no longer carrying the compressed intensity of earlier years, but maintaining a steadier rhythm, less turbulent, yet still continuous. Within that flow, activities such as Uncle Monk with Claudia Tiemann or tribute-oriented projects did not open a new direction, but functioned as points of connection, where sound continued to be sustained within a familiar structure, without expansion, without distortion, simply shifting into another state, closer, slower, yet still retaining the focus that had always existed in his way of working. Tommy's presence in this phase was not defined by frequency of appearance, but by the way he continued to maintain a stable working rhythm behind the scenes, where nothing needed to be brought forward to be recognized, and it was precisely that which kept his private life from being pulled into the movements of the surrounding environment. When placed within the entirety of his journey, this phase did not create a rupture, but connected seamlessly with what came before, keeping the trajectory intact, only changing in intensity. Tommy Ramone's legacy, therefore, does not lie in easily identifiable milestones, but in the way a musical structure was preserved and continued to operate over time, independent of his position on stage or in the studio. Decisions about rhythm, about reduction, about holding energy within a minimal form did not remain confined to a specific period, but became a foundation that could be received and recreated across many different contexts. That influence did not appear as an explosion, but spread along smaller paths, through other bands, through different spaces, retaining its shape even when placed into new environments. As layers of sound continued to be repeated across later generations, very few traced them back to their origin. The structure that the Ramones established did not need to be named in order to exist. It had become a default way of operating across many musical spaces. Tommy Ramone did not leave behind a highly recognizable image, nor did he attach himself to singular peaks. What remains lies in the way songs were shortened, in the way rhythm was held steady as speed increased, in the way a structure could stand on its own, without requiring additional layers to support it. And as those sounds continue to appear elsewhere, under different names, the question is no longer who created it, but rather, why can something so simple endure for so long?